Okay, Navin, whenever.
Welcome, distinguished speakers, guests, and friends. Namaste, Assalamu alaikum, and warm greetings to all of you. I am Ashley Sananan of Trinidad and Tobago, an independent researcher specializing in historical studies. I hold a bachelor's degree in history with a minor in literature from the University of the West Indies. This is the 326th edition of our ICC Thought Leaders Forum. We wish to sincerely thank all of you who have graciously contributed to the success of this ongoing Pan-Indo-Caribbean and Pan-Indian Diaspora Global Project. For 325 unbroken continuous weeks, we have been here every single Sunday. In the past 5 years, 11 months, and 3 weeks, we have featured 1,289 presenters speaking on 325 topics. We are pleased to have speakers and participants at this meeting from all parts of the world in different time zones. In order to continue this weekly program, we are asking you for suggestions and volunteers. If you choose to give a donation, Dr. Mahabir should be contacted to provide details and ensure that your name will be placed on our poster and all promotional materials. This weekly forum is being hosted by the Indo-Caribbean Cultural Center. It's research and publishing company operating since 2010. And like today, we often partner with the Amina Gafur Institute for the study of indentureship and its legacies, led by Professor David Aberdeen. I am pleased today to introduce our moderator, who is Shalima Mohammed, who is also the co-director of ICC Zoom platform. She is a cultural and heritage consultant, business psychologist, teacher, and researcher from right here in Trinidad and Tobago. Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome Ms. Shalima Mohammed.
Thanks so much, Ashley. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Namaste, and a warm welcome to all of you here in the Zoom room, as well as those of you viewing the live stream on the YouTube channel of the Indo-Caribbean Cultural Center. I want to thank you very much for choosing to be here with us. And I want to start today by saying we are so pleased to inform you that Professor Doug Monroe, who appeared in our program last week, and seemed to be having a medical emergency during the program. Dr. Monroe is here with us today. He's quite well and is undergoing some more medical tests to ensure that he remains in the best of health. So we're very happy to have him with us again, and we wish him very, very good health. Today's presentation is a continuation of our question last week, in which we asked, should Indians in the diaspora demand reparations for indentureship? And this is part 3 of the conversation. But before we get into it, I'd just like to pay tribute to one of the persons who was very, very instrumental, or is very, very instrumental in having us host today's program. And that is Mrs. Amina Gafur, now deceased. She was an author, she was an arts activist, she was a philanthropist, whose second death anniversary is on August 26th, 3 days from today. Mrs. Amina Gafur was the founder of the Amina Gafur Institute for the study of indentureship and its legacies. And of course, Thanks very much to Professor David Dabadine for reminding us to pay tribute to this very special woman. So, we also want to send greetings to her family, and we wish you Allah's blessings. So, may I remind you of our conversation last week? Again, we are saying we want to discuss, should Indians in the diaspora demand reparations for indentureship? Last week, Dr. Shajuddin Chaparban from India argued that the indentureship system should be understood not just as a labor migration system, but as a form of exploitation, a form of slavery, a bonded labor system, a colonial enterprise which led to the forced displacement of persons of Indian origin with long-term consequences for citizenship, belonging, and political membership, not just in the Caribbean countries such as here in Trinidad and Tobago, Suriname, and Guyana, but including countries where indentured migration was prevalent. Rajan Singh Nazran spoke as well, and he's based in England. He said, what indenture was modern day slavery 2.0. And by saying yes to whether Indians should demand reparations, the question now becomes who qualifies, who pays, who receives, who decides, and what actually counts as repair. He continued, we know that this, meaning indentureship, is historic injustice. So our program today will consider the arguments advanced by advocates of reparations for African slavery and ask whether similar principles of historical responsibility, compensation, restorative justice, and redress can be applied to Indian indentureship. The discussion will also explore whether reparations should be understood primarily as financial compensation or more broadly as apologies, educational programs, heritage preservation, community development, and other forms of restorative action. And it's my pleasure to welcome our first speaker today, who is Dr. Archana Tiwari from India. She's a former head of the Department of Western History at the University of Lucknow, specializing in the history of the Indian diaspora. She's written on Indian indentured women in the Caribbean. Welcome, Dr. Tiwari. You can go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to present my views on this forum, and I like the permission to share my screen. Thank you.
Certainly. You should be able to do so now.
Yes, she has permission. Yes, go ahead and share.
Yes, sir. Just a moment.
Okay, we are seeing it.
Yes. Okay, can you see it, ma'am?
Yes, we are seeing it. Would you like to put it into
Full screen,
full screen
presentation mode. If not, we can run like this. Right, better.
Okay. How to go to the first screen? This is backwards, this is forward. Okay. Okay. So can I? Next.
Yes, you can go ahead, please.
Myself, Archana Tiwari, and I've been teaching in Lucknow University for almost 30 years now. I joined as part-time lecturer in 1996, and my topic of research was Indian migration to Trinidad, and this diaspora, I've been promoting the studies of diaspora in my department in my university, And I'm pleased to be associated with ICC today, who have given me this opportunity to present my views that should Indians in the diaspora demand reparation for indentureship. Now, as a student of history, I recall about the first mention of the term reparations during the Paris Peace Settlement, which was at the end of the First World War. And the aim was to reach out a settlement at the end of the war with the defeated countries, which were Germany, Austria-Hungary, Bulgaria, and Turkey. Reparations were demanded from Germany, and it was an astronomical figure. Uh, Germany was defeated, and the money was demanded from Germany for the devastation that was suffered by the Allied nation during the World War One. The term reparation since that time has assumed some identification with revenge, the same way that we identify the word indenture with exploitation. Here, we should, I didn't explain the term old diaspora. The Indian diaspora is very big, and we have the people who migrated before 1947. They constitute the category called old diaspora, and those who migrated later after 1947, they are, their roots, and for the purpose that they migrated to the Western countries, that is different. So they constitute the new diaspora. So the migration of Indians to far off colonies, most of them are now independent nations. That led to the creation of old Indian diaspora. The old diaspora includes Indians who migrated under various schemes like indenture, Kangani, Mastri, and also Indians who migrated out of their own free will, like the Sikhs in Canada and Gujarati merchants who migrated to different countries of Africa and many other countries for the purpose of business. The indentured Indians experienced fraudulent recruitment and emotional burden of loss of religion, family, and home, and haunting pain that they will never return to their loved ones and motherland. Grueling working schedule in the sugar plantations, near starvation wages, incomplete social life for many due to the scarcity of women, inhumane treatment at the hands of the overseers and other white officials of the sugar estates, restrictions on their movements, no redressal to their complaints, lack of justice. Many a times the protector of the immigrants was also a friend of the owner of the sugar estate, and many more. So my view is that all this was the abuse of imperialism. Why was there migration of Indians under indentured system? Because these are my reasons. India was a colony of British. Once British acquired political control over Indian territories, they started on a scheme to draw wealth uh, of the regions in a number of ways, like imposing high revenue on land, exported good quality raw materials to Britain, destroyed local trades and handicrafts. In many cases, cruel methods were used, like amputation of the thumbs of artisans involved in the weaving of Dhaka muslin. When an Indian princely state was occupied by the British, the court, the artisans, the attendants, and many others associated with the rulers were rendered unemployed. These acts of the British administration led to unemployment and poverty. The policy of the British government led to massive unemployment and poverty, which forced people to migrate to far off colonies on the promise of high wages and easy conditions of work. Mass of Indians lived on the verge of destitution and starvation, and a small percentage agreed, or we can say were forced to migrate. Many wars in India were won by British by way of bribes, treachery, the cooperation of the fellow Indians who saw an opportunity to prosper under the British rule. The policy of imperialism followed by the European powers caused First World War, and it caused misery to the Europeans as well. Indenture was one of the results of the policy of imperialism followed by British. In India, the landed class, zamindars, the princely estates were the supporters of the British rule. Under the Indian indenture system, the poor innocent Indians who were looking for a job were enticed by an arkati or arkatiniya, that is the male or female unlicensed recruiters respectively. The arkati were important link in the system, and they were Indians. An unlicensed recruiter was equally responsible for the migration of innocent Indian men and women to far-off European colonies. They knew the problems of the people, manipulated them to agree to go to Calcutta for a job. Most of the researchers, I feel, have focused on the transport or migration of Indians. There is a need to look into the role of unlicensed recruiter as well. The Girmitia and the Arkati, they belong to the same region. Because the familiarity with the problems of the region, conversation with the Girmitia helped the Arkati to convince the Indians to go to work in the colonies. We have so many researchers on Girmitia, but none on the recruiter. I feel that indentureship was not a total loss, and there were certain achievements also under indentureship. Indentureship brought out the best talents of the Indians. Despite all odds, Indians survived by making their culture their anchor. As they said, Girmit Kate, that once this Girmit is over, there will be better days. It taught the Indians the value of education. The Indians learned that ill treatment against them in alien surroundings, they could overcome only through education. Education was the key that opened so many vistas for the Indians. Education opened the new areas of employment for them. This improved their status in the host society. Education made them aware and socially conscious and encouraged them to be politically empowered as well. In many countries of old diaspora, Indians have been elected to I'm sorry for the spelling mistake here, as head of the states. Many Indian writers and intellectuals whose forefathers were indentured labor have made great achievements and many rewards. Naipaul is one of them. Twice migrants have made their way to the positions of great importance and proved the significance and positive effect of migration. However, I feel that the indentureship was definitely a great injustice towards the Indians. And instead of monetary demands, we should have some logical demands which we can put forward. First and foremost, Indians can use the issue of indentureship to usher changes in the entire Anglophone, because Anglophone was the largest of the group of countries under a single imperialist power. How we can put forward our demands? First and foremost, we can begin with a public apology that Britain should apologize for having initiated this indenture system, which led to the migration of Indians and who lost connection with their own roots. We can demand change in the interpretation of history. We can demand full access to the British archives to examine the views of the British politicians when important policies were drafted, especially to examine documents where there are references to white man's burden, remarks justifying exploitation, racism, or statements mocking Asians or Africans. This will set a ball rolling. The nations under French, Dutch, Spanish, Portuguese, and US colonial rule will make similar demands. Why I feel that my demand or my argument is justified, because Indian philosophy also is against against the feeling of revenge, the Indians have exhibited grit and determination and tided over adverse circumstances. They have pulled themselves out of poverty, destitution, and helplessness in various phases of history. Demanding reparation for the wrong deeds which were committed, say, in 19th and 20th century is surprising. Thank you.
Excellent presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'm glad you raised the whole issue of the achievements of indentureship. You look specifically at the achievements for the Indians themselves, but I think we haven't heard anyone talk about the achievements of the imperial authorities. And perhaps that's something that needs to be considered in this conversation. So I want to thank you very much for your contribution, and please stay with us because we're going to ask that members of the audience hold their comments and their questions until after all the presentations have been done. Is that okay with you, Dr. Tiwari?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I'm here.
Excellent. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we want to move on to our second speaker, and this is our brother from Mauritius, Satyendra Pirta. He's a Mauritian Guyanese historian, writer, and lecturer who is based in the research unit of the Apravasi Ghat Trust Fund, which manages the Apravasi Ghat World Heritage Site. Welcome, Sat. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good afternoon, good evening, and good morning to all our followers, to our listeners. Thank you, Shaliva, for that very warm welcome, and also to Kumar for having asked me. So the issue of reparations is something quite interesting, and I congratulate the Indo-Caribbean Cultural Center and Amina Ghaffur for taking up this issue. I think it has been something long overdue. So I start my presentation. It's entitled, Should Indians in the Diaspora Demand Reparations for Indentureship? The Mauritian Historic Context and Justifications. Okay. Basically, in Mauritius, the idea of compensation was first discussed in 2001 at the MGI, when the idea of the ILRP, the indenture labor route, was first discussed. And it was part of the same process in order to reappropriate our history as descendants of indentured workers, and also to rehabilitate the history of indentured workers in the making of Mauritian, Indian, and modern world history. Between 2002 and 2008, different seminars and events were held at the MGI, which established, the MGI, of course, was established in the 1970s with help of India, and the Apravasi Ghat Trust Fund was established in 2001 and 2002 for an act of the Parliament of Mauritius, where very frequently the issue of compensation or reparation was discussed, was demanded by descendants of immigrants, by academics, intellectuals, and ordinary Mauritians, and some foreign scholars as well. In 2009, the setting up of the Truth and Justice Commission of the Republic of Mauritius, one of its key features was to look into the questions of reparation and compensation for both descendants of slaves and of indentured laborers. And also, the Labour Party was in power in an alliance, and it was part of the electoral manifesto, which became a reality. I was a researcher together with Vijaya Tilak and Alex Borain, who was the chairperson. Vijaya was the vice chairperson. I was a researcher. I was tasked in doing research on indentured labor. So in 2010, there were 2 depositions by myself as a researcher of the TJC and historian of AGTF. I gave 2 depositions. And a year into the project, I deponed on issues related to indentured laborers, where under oath it is recorded. It is part of the permanent record. And what I'm going to present today was an outline of what I deponed, I spoke about after years of research. Of course, it has been refined over the years. And personally, as Kumar asked me, I personally support the idea of reparations in some way or form, mostly in kind and in material and not financially. Financial. Next slide, please. So early during the following year, 2011, before the commission wrapped its depositions, I returned back to Apravasi Ghat and I helped Mr. Raju Mohit, the then office in charge and director, to draft a depositions where he presented the demands on behalf of AGTF, descendants of immigrants. So he deposed in front of the commission. And during the course of 2011, Vijay Tilak, working with our team, etc., with Alex Moraine, we had worked on the 5 volumes of the Truth and Justice Commission, which was drafted and published, and where the issue of reparations was discussed. In 2009, the Truth and Justice Commission, after 2 years, in 2011, presented its work. Among the 295 recommendations was for the government of Mauritius and other institutions to look into the issue of compensation of reparation to descendants of indentured laborers. However, the major snaggle issue for discussion is like slavery was indentured labor, was it a crime against humanity, which remains unresolved in the public forums and academic discussions here in Mauritius. In 2012 and 2013, Dr. Regis Ramsamy, the president of Gopio Réunion, nearby Réunion Island, pushed forward the idea that, like slavery, indentured labor was a crime against humanity, which received very limited support from Gopio, Réunion, and Mauritius. He wanted a UN resolution to be enacted to support this fact. Next slide, please. Can we move to the next slide? So one of the major issues and bones of contention with this approach is that it would mean to accept the Tinkerian paradigm of the 1970s, that indentured labor was a new kind of slavery, when for the more than 40 years, international scholarship in Mauritius, the Caribbean, and elsewhere has clearly tried to debunk this theory, with some holdouts still out there. We accept the fact that indentured labor had certain elements of slavery, but we have to demarcate between these 2 labor systems. It was a system of domination, it was inhumane, but at the same time, indentured laborers were legally free people under the duress of a contract. There were laws enacted, of course, but indentured laborers, they kept their culture. They went back and forth from Mauritius to India and back and forth. They invited their families. There was circular migration. They retained their culture. They purchased land. Their families, their children were legally free people. So we have to be very careful when we call indentured labor a new system of slavery, which I know some of our listeners will not agree with me. However, back to this story. In 2011, 2014, the Apravasiga Trust Fund, together with the Ministry of Arts and Culture and the University of Mauritius and the MGI, we organized 2 international conferences, which were greatly successful, where Umar Mahabir and several of our scholars who are online came, and they contributed either in person or online, where the issues of reparations and compensation was discussed. Resolutions were adopted, but only symbolic in nature. During the 2010s and 2020s, certain sociocultural groups and NGOs in Mauritius mentioned the issue of reparations for descendants of indentured laborers, but no effective action was taken. The issues that remained unresolved in Mauritius is namely was indentured labor, was it a new system of slavery and a crime against humanity? Question mark. That's first. Secondly, the need for a framework and action plan for such an approach here in Mauritius and our partners in the diaspora. Number 3, who would pay? As Shalima just asked, there was another presenter last year. Is it the British, the French government, the colonial powers, the government of Mauritius, the descendants of the sugar barons, the landowners? What about the descendants of the Britishers? What about the Indians and even the Seerdals and Indo-Europeans who represented a secondary form of exploitation? Lastly, what is next for this socioeconomic process? However, in recent times, unfortunately, the government of Mauritius, despite several petitions, has not addressed this issue. Now, this brings me to the second part of my presentation. Next slide, please. Basically, the next one is a series of justifications as to what happened here in Mauritius and why the descendants of immigrants are entitled to some type of reparation or compensation. Between 1826 and 1910, we received 462,000 immigrants, Indians and non-Indians, men, women, and children reached Mauritian shores, 8,000 or more dying immediately during or after the passage. Between the 1850s and early 1900s, thousands died when quarantined on Flat Island, Île Gabriel. There are quarantine stations located off the island of Mauritius, or Puerto Canonier in the northwest corner of the islands, and even some at the Apravasigat and the immigration depot. Between 1865 and 1868, more than 15,000 Indian immigrants and Indo-Mauritians died without getting medical care and neglect during the Great Malaria epidemic. They were left to their own devices. And equally important, between the 1830s and early 1900s, there was a high mortality rate on the sugar estates. It is estimated that more than 130,000 or 140,000, or 1/3, 1 in every 3 immigrants died on the sugar estates within a few years of arriving or during the years and decades on the sugar estates due to diseases, lack of medical care, etc. And this fact was elucidated as far back as the 1940s by 1950s by Sukhdev Bisundayal, who was an Indo-Mauritian social, cultural, political leader and writer. Between 1835 and 1921, 1 in every 3 immigrants was arrested as a vagrant and also for desertion and illegal absence. To show you the scope of the tyranny and the repressive state apparatus that the British had in Mauritius. Next slide, please. Between 1835 and 1907, 24 colonial laws, ordinances, and notices were enacted to control the labor, lives, and the mobility of the indentured laborers. These were essentially labor laws and vagrancy laws. At the height of the repression in 1861 to 1871, 205,000 immigrants and Indo-Mauritians were arrested as vagrants for illegal absence, desertion, and minor offenses. Draconian laws like the laws of 1867 was passed and enacted, which allowed the vagrant hunts and mass arrests by the colonial police, the white colonists, and others, which led to scores of vagrant hunts and the mass arrest of thousands of immigrants. Like how my friend Gopi wrote a book recently and will be presenting this in 1871 or mentioning it. The Dupliffitt's petition led to the Police Inquiry of 1872 and the Royal Commission of 1875. Around the same time, we had the Devo Commission in Guyana and another commission in South Africa, which probably there was a relation in some way, shape, or form. The Royal Commissioners noted that there was an unbridled harassment of the immigrants by the colonial police and the colonial authorities. They noted that the protectorate of slaves, the governor, and the stipendiary magistrates had failed in their duties towards the immigrants. And what is even equally surprising is that 3/4 or 7,000 out of the 9,000 signatories were old immigrants who were landowners, business owners, skilled owners who had built in the colonies for 30 to 40 years, de facto residents. But they were still arrested and harassed and hassled by the colonial police. Recommendations were made by the Royal Commissioners, but very little changed until 1907 when the vagrancy law was repealed, and in 1922 when the labor law was repealed, taking effect, taking out the penal clause out of the indenture contract. Next slide, please.
Next slide, please.
Navin.
So between 1880 and 1890, Indian immigrants and Indo-Mauritian workers filed more than 120,000 complaints against their employers. 3/4 was for non-payment of wages, but 2/3 of them was able to win their cases in the court. During the 1860s and 1870s, and this is very important when we're talking about compensation, the wage bill for 100,000 immigrants in Mauritius and Mauritian workers on 265 estates was around £1 million sterling. However, the planters and the sugar barons each year was able to withhold £300,000 sterling or 3 million rupees or more than through the double cut system for debt owed in the state shops or for those who ran away in terms of wages owed to by those who deserted. Professor Palmer Veerapan, the economist from the University of Mauritius and a commissioner with whom I work, estimated that the sugar barons and the owners fleeced or stole more than £13 million sterling or more than 300 million rupees from the Indian immigrants and their descendants between the 1830s and the 1930s, which today amounts to anywhere from 100 to 300 billion Mauritian rupees. Just to give you an idea, the Mauritian rupees to the US dollar is 46 rupees for $1, 1 USD. The double cut system existed from the 1830s until the 1930s, so for more than a century, their wages was being withheld from them. Corporal punishment existed on the sugar estates from the 1830s right up until the 1940s. During the 1860s, a system of depot was established, including the vagrant depot, a central depot to the colony, where from 1864 to 1886, more than 65,000 Indians and non-Indians were imprisoned and mistreated. Next slide, please. I'm almost done. So at the vagrant depot, the recalcitrant and rebellious prisoners were beaten with 20 to 30 lashes with a whip or the rattan stick. With hundreds of dying during this period from mistreatment and torture, hundreds died in the other depots. They were placed in solitary confinement for a week and a month, and some even becoming mad or going crazy. They were required to break stone in the hot sun near Port Louis and in other parts of the island in subtropical climate, and only provided with food and water, with many of them losing weight, becoming sick, and even dying. If an indentured immigrant escaped for a year, he would owe 300 days of labor to the planter or his employer. 2 years if they escaped, 600 days labor to the employers or the planters. Between 1860 and 1890, the sugar barons and employers filed more than 200,000 complaints against their employees, the indentured laborers and Indo-Merchants for vagrancy, absence, illegal desertion for minor offences. They claimed the immigrants owed them tens of thousands of pounds sterling or hundreds of thousands rupees each year. Between the 1830s and the 1900s, we can count thousands of cases of rape, sexual exploitation, mistreatment of female immigrants. There were several cases of families even being separated at the depot and on the sugar estates, some of them eventually being reunited. During this period, there was a high rate of suicide and infanticide and even abortion. During the same period, there were thousands of immigrants dying in the colonial prisons and many more of disease, malnutrition, torture, including on the sugar estates, in the villages, and in some of the small prisons. Next slide, please. So as an analysis, we must also remember that Mauritius had a head start on many of the colonies, and many of the laws enacted in Mauritius were replicated elsewhere in Guyana, La Réunion, South Africa, Fiji, and elsewhere. The history of the indentured laborers and their descendants in Mauritius is written in blood and a constant struggle against Europeanization. We talked about exploitation. It was there. They had to struggle against racism, prejudice, being treated as the alien, the other. It was only in 1891, almost half a century after the indentured labor system started, that they were recognized as Indo-Mauritians. Otherwise, they were labeled in the colonial records as Creole de Maurice, Creoles of Mauritius. More than 150,000 returned, especially after 1853, when the right of return was abolished. By the 1860s and 1870s, Mauritius was no longer seen as a favored destination for indentured laborers, with thousands of Indo-Mauritians even returning to India during the ensuing decades with their families and friends. The same was asserted by labor recruiters, returning immigrants, and immigrants who worked and lived in different parts of the colonies, including Guyana, Trinidad, and other parts of the world. Even by the 1930s, many of the old immigrants and Indo-Mauritians did not have the right to vote, own property, they lived on the sugar estates. They still lived there, dependent on wage labor. Few had rights. They were subject to corporal punishment, the double cut system, nocturnal curfews, little medical care, and late payment in wages or salaries. Between the mid-1930s and 1950s, it was thanks to the emergence of the mass movements, labor parties, trade unions, industrial associations, just like in Guyana, Jamaica, Trinidad, Fiji, South Africa, and Réunion Island. The same process was taking place gradually in another context. Today, the case can be made and has been made through the historical data for reparation to be made for descendants of indentured workers. In Mauritius, it will only be a matter of time if it is part of the national discourse and that we are able to work around this issue, work with other countries. Mauritius can work with other countries or other organizations like CARICOM in order to have an international front one day. We don't know. We still have to, at the national level here in Mauritius, to discuss it amongst ourselves before we can even have a discourse with other parts of the world. So thank you very much for your attention. And I pass the mic back to Kumar and Shalima. Thank you very much for your attention.
Excellent presentation as well, Sat. Thank you very much. Very, very detailed as always. And we know that the information is reliable coming from you. I especially appreciate the fact that you've been able to quantify with the assistance of the economist. We've been able to quantify 30 million pounds were fleeced or stolen by the sugar barons. You also spoke very in detail, rather, about the various forms of exploitation, the associated indignities that the indentures suffered, and that can be contrasted to the achievements that Dr. Tiwari spoke about earlier. So I want to thank you very much for that. And as I want to invite members of the audience, please write down your questions, write down your comments, or keep it up front, because we are going to move on to our next speaker. And so you will have an opportunity at the end of all the presentations to bring your question to Mr. Pirka. Thanks again, Seth.
Thank you.
I want to welcome our third speaker now, who is Jayandat Gopi, also of Mauritius. He's a former accountant and corporate governance specialist. He's also the author of the book titled Fighting Injustice for Indian Indentured Immigrants, a tribute to Adolphe de Plevitz, 1837 to 1893. Welcome, Mr. Gopi.
Unmute, yes, sir, unmute.
Mr. Gopi, can you unmute your mic, please? Dr. Mohammed.
He has to unmute. Right.
There you go. I think you have it now.
Yeah. Well, greetings again, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Mohabir and Shalima, for giving me this opportunity to share my views in this forum. I am thankful to my colleague, Mr. Pietam, who also recommended that I do share my views in this forum. I only know Mr. Pietam since about less than 2 years, but it has been a good coincidence that we met and we have been sharing ideas. He helped me a lot on my book, Fighting Injustice. I was always interested in knowing more about the history of Mauritius, although my profession was different. Can you hear me clearly? Hello?
Yes, but if you speak a
Yeah.
little louder, it'd be better.
Yeah, okay. So my profession was rather different than his history, which means that I am a novice on this subject, but I am trying hard to know a lot more on this issue. I have seen the video of last week, I have lengthily, on part 2, and also one previous video entitled Indenture Crime Against Humanity, which I have seen only partly. I'll go back and complete the reading later. So thank you for giving me this opportunity. I would say, frankly, it's a yes to the question raised today about indenture. And what you must have noticed, Mr. Pietam has focused on the process so far on this issue and the history, the legacy that has been left by indenture in the past. He has been therefore concentrating on evidence as we agreed between us. And I'll be focusing rather on the strategy, on possible options, and inquiring on possibilities of going ahead with this long adventure of claiming reparation. Can we see the slides now?
Navin would show the slides.
Okay, so it's going to be a long journey from historical recognition of injustice, exploitation, or whatever word we will be using, because a lot will be defined by legal guidance later. So it's a long journey from historical recognition of injustice in indenture to reparatory justice, which should be based on evidence. Next slide. As we all know, there have been nearly 500 laborers who reached Mauritius in the 1830s and early 90s, almost 500,000. And worldwide, about 2.2 million people were sent to other countries. So the Mauritius population of Indian indenture was about 20% of the total indenture population worldwide. Next slide. The case for Mauritius seems to be very distinctive and like a pioneering case, because this is where it seems like most of the evidence of indenture has started, right? UNESCO identifies Aprovasi Ghat as the place where modern indenture labor diaspora began. And by now, 70% of modern Mauritians are descendants of indentured labor. So the point here is that the first large-scale test of the indenture started here. Next slide. Right. Of course, we should not try to equate indenture with slavery, because there are two different systems, two different legal systems. The case must establish, rather, legal character, lived conditions, and economic effects of each stage. As we see in the chart from left to right, there has been the abolition of slavery. Then in Mauritius, British tried the Great Experiment, followed quickly after 5 years with suspension of immigration. Then it took over, started again, and there was mass migration to Mauritius in the years 1843 to 65, and it ended in the early 1990s. So we should be careful. We must analyze the two systems, slavery and indenture, very precisely, and not mix issues too often. Next slide. Our claims should be seen to be credible. Credible in the sense that it must be evidence-based. It must be based on evidence. My friend Pietam just presented so many evidence, so many findings and examples of exploitation, of misery, of inflicted harm, psychological, physical, financial, moral, all sorts of harm that was inflicted to indentured immigrants. So we have to try to analyze in several ways. We have to build record across the whole system, from recruitment to present day consequences, because the consequences of indenture, like was for slavery, it has been long lasting, even up to now. When you see on the left of the slide, entry side, even the recruitment, contracts, transportation, and wages, the systems that were there, we have to see who designed it, who administered and implemented the labor regime in terms of conditions, discipline that was enforced, penal sanctions that were taken. And going next to the human impact of indenture, as mentioned by Mr. Pietam and other presenters, there have been all sorts of violence, mortality and suicide rates were enormous. Women were discriminated, and access to justice were very, very limited. Examples of we have seen where magistrates did not give the justice that were deserved by the complaining indentured laborers. Finally, what has been the legacy, what has survived up to now? We have seen, we will see that land and assets are there. Institutions, those we started, they are still here with some remnants of all sorts of injustice still continuing in various forms. We will come to all this later. Next slide. And of course, there is the impact on the subsequent generations. The impact of indenture. It started with exploitation of labor, or supposedly with the use of labor, which produced sugar that led to profits made by the entrepreneurs, the sugar estates, etc., using land and capital, using institutions to their benefit, and which they inherited largely. So basically, we will have to document what was produced, owned, and transferred on the left of the slide. In the middle, we have to see which actors, which protagonists captured value through what institutions. And finally, we have to see which effects can be shown to persist even today and likely to continue later if nothing is done as reparatory justice. Next slide. So this has been mentioned by many of the colleagues. I won't take too much time on it. But when we are talking of reparation, it should be a bigger portfolio, not just financial. And like you see on the slide, it should be recognition and truth, memory and learning, community capability, and structural remedy. We will come to that in detail, perhaps in other presentations, but these are well known to most of the presenters in the past and now. So let's not put too much time on it. Next slide. Our claim that we will be making now or later, maybe I don't know whether we'll be there in this lifetime to continue this long battle, but the claim must follow uh, disciplinary steps. Here I have identified 4 basic steps to be followed, and each step narrows the gap between the historical memory, that is what we know, to the credible remedy that we aspire. There have been historical wrong. Somebody must take responsibility for that and for the continuing consequences. And because all this has been happening, somebody must do justice to that. There must be appropriate repair. What remedies should be there? This has to be discussed properly. Finally, discipline keeps the claim evidence-led. Discipline will also indicate how we will apply proportionality and how we will make it credible to the international protagonists. Next slide. This is also quite well known. We know that so many other countries, Caribbean, Asian, African, are involved in this long journey of reparation. Some have progressed a bit in advanced stage, some have even started. So the point here is that indenture must be seen as a transnational project or adventure. So research and advocacy should also be transnational, meaning it should cross different countries, not a single country doing it alone in isolation. Next slide. This will be like a repetition for on an earlier slide. Again, the pathway should be credible before we seek compensation. So the first stage in the pathway must be recognition, acknowledge the system and document the abuses that have been happening. Second stage will be the inquiry, full-scale inquiry on, from different angles. The historical angle and the legal angle must be fully inquired and investigated. After the findings obtained from the detailed inquiry, we will proceed to the next pathway, next stage, which is dialogue. And like Mr. Pietam earlier said and other speakers, it cannot be just a battle by Mauritius or any other single country, but all other countries putting their hands together. Repair will be in various forms, not just financial. Next. The issue, we are repeating it again, must be internationalized through research, archives, and standards. We should turn this experience as a historical experience and move towards a recognized field of international cooperation. This is the opportunity when the different countries concerned, the former British colonies, and where Indian indentured laborers and immigrants have settled, all these countries must work together. And maybe there should be like a proper global research program where history and evidence must be collected for each country and collected in a coordinated manner. There should be proper records kept for all the research that will be done by each country and the relevant institutions. We should engage the involvement of UNESCO and other similar bodies. The legal side of the inquiry, of the research, must be taken into account because there will be many complications in defining terms in being definite and specific about exactly what forms of justice were done. So we need legal advice all the way. We should get the participation of communities and descendants. And finally, if we can connect all other countries and build all this information together into a global memory network, that would make our task easier. Next slide. I gather from little reading that CARICOM has done some work on that. I still have to see what is the 10-point manifesto, but I know it's a major work that has been carried out. And that is the current framework. There is an opportunity for Mauritius to join in and bridge that exercise with evidence coming from Indian Ocean and from research here and other findings that will be done during the process. Next slide. So this debate that we are doing, or in case, I don't know whether it will be joint exercise. Of course, it should be, but when it will start, in what manner, in what way, that will be seen as we move along. So the credibility depends on discipline boundaries. The stronger argument is precise about what it does and what it does not claim. We must at all costs avoid equating indenture with slavery, like we said earlier. All attempts must be made not to assign guilt on present-day populations. We should avoid attributing every inequality to just one cause, because many of the situations are multifaceted. And we should not start with an arbitrary financial figure. And we should avoid reducing the claim to a specific ethnic or a specific religion. On the right side, we should rather insist, and here I must lay emphasis, we should insist on building our dossier properly with plenty of evidence. We have a lot of evidence so far, but they should be formatted, packaged, presented in a way like courts do, so that they are heard and they follow their path through. So evidence is absolutely important, not scattered evidence, but well-knitted evidence so that the case is strong enough. Causes must be identified. What institutions bear responsibility for indenture or injustice caused to indenture? The participation of descendants have been pointed out. International cooperation must be there with insistence, and remedies must be proportionate, because one harm may require more remedy, financially or non-financially, than other harms or injustice. Next slide. A reparatory package should move from recognition to remedy. We must build layers and activate stronger remedies only where the evidence supports them. Where we feel like evidence is lacking, not complete, or is weak, we should be careful in not advancing it too much ahead. So most of our things that we will do under this whole venture of claiming reparation must be evidence-based. That is the main point. And covering all those dimensions, from foundation to truth, capability to education, connection to development, and remedy, financial or non-financial. The package looks like should be modular. Remedy should follow proven harm, proven responsibility, and proven continuing consequence. Next slide. Here we go to the deeper question, which is how historical value became present-day advantage. The matter is not simply about how much money should Mauritius receive, but rather we should have answers to the following questions. We have 6 of them for now. Whose labor built wealth? Straightforward answer is indenture. So we must document our dossier on that question. Similarly, on the second question, who captured the surplus, the profit, the gain, the different forms of benefit? Who benefited all this? We must pinpoint responsibility. Thirdly, who acquired the assets which were built with a contribution of indentured labor? Assets, they will be in various forms: physical, non-physical, financial, etc. Fourth question, who inherited them? And there will be the question of generations, not a single generation. What was lost during that whole process? And what survives today? So all these questions are like subsets of evidence that should be built and packaged in a dossier for claiming reparation. Because reparatory justice asks how historical truth can lead to meaningful repair. Next slide. In conclusion, we can say that we are moving from remembrance to evidence-led repair. The emphasis is on repair. Mauritius already holds the site, the Pravasi Ghat site. We have other legacies and relics acting as proof, as evidence. We have physical records in our archives here, like we all know. And Mauritius being the starting point for indenture, Mauritius has a great potential in helping in this project together with other countries. So from remembrance, from history, we'll be moving to collection of data, of information, of evidence. We will then be claiming recognition from local people and from outside. People must recognize that there has been injustice. There has been all forms of misery, of coercion, of exploitation, and all this. And like I said earlier, the journey should involve the cooperation of Mauritius here and other countries as well, together with other transnational organizations, so that we can move progressively towards repair. So the immediate task is not to declare an answer right now, but to build the evidence first. That should be the next step. Build the evidence and see which institutions and partnership and partners are capable of reaching and working together to reaching the expected and justified reparation. I think that's the last slide. Thank you very much, everybody.
Mr. Gopi, this was quite an extraordinary presentation. I have to congratulate you and highly commend you, and I can see why you were so highly recommended by Satyendra Pirtham. You've strategized, and I can find, well, of course, I have to study it. I would like to have an opportunity to study it, but I think what you've created here really is the strategy, the way forward, exceptionally well thought out. So I want to thank you very, very much for that.
Thank you.
I'm sure
the work has just started.
Sorry?
I was just saying the work has just started and we will move forward.
Excellent.
Yes.
Excellent. So to members of the audience, please keep your questions at hand. I'm sure you also have some questions for Mr. Gopi, and we would welcome those. Mr. Gopi, thank you again.
You're welcome.
So let me bring on our fourth and final speaker, and this is Dr. Aman Singh Maharaj of South Africa. He's a novelist and columnist. His acclaimed debut novel titled A Dalliance with Destiny unfolds across South Africa and India, exploring themes of identity, ancestry, and spirituality. Welcome, Mr. Maharaj.
Thank you, Shalima. Dr. Mahabir, good evening, good morning, good afternoon. I don't know where you are in the world, but good, happy times to everyone. So just to run into it, I want to begin with a number, and that number is 1,194,957. So that's the number of Indians whom UNESCO records as having relocated under the indenture system to 19 colonies. More than a million human beings. They crossed oceans to Mauritius, Natal, British Guyana, Trinidad, Fiji, and elsewhere, ostensibly as what they call contracted workers. But today I want to ask some uncomfortable questions. What, if anything, does Britain owe their descendants? So I'm going to argue that repatriations are justified, but I'm also going to argue that simply demanding an enormous check from the British Treasury is neither realistic nor particularly imaginative. Britain simply cannot undo indenture. It probably can afford to compensate every descendant adequately. And frankly, if we try to calculate a full invoice for colonialism, I suspect the Chancellor of the Exchequer would suddenly stop returning our calls. So I propose something different, to not merely compensate the descendants of indenture, invest in them rather. So my argument has three parts. First, Britain should acknowledge what happened. Enough about the rhetoric that British gave India the railways as if it was done for the Indian interest. Second, we should quantify the scale as honestly as the historical evidence allows. And third, Britain should invest in the descendants of those people through education. Now, that distinction is important. Reparations should not become an auction in human suffering. For instance, how much was your great-great-great-grandmother's suffering worth? 10,000 pounds, 50,000 pounds, 100,000 pounds? How do you quantify it? There is something almost, I suggest we ask, what intervention today could genuinely alter the trajectory of the communities created by indenture? And my answer on that is education. So to understand why Britain bears a responsibility, we need to understand where did indenture come from. Britain abolished slavery in most of its empire, they say in 1833. That is questionable. However, it was unquestionably a historic achievement. There was, however, a slight problem. The plantation still needed workers. Sugar did not suddenly decide to harvest itself because Parliament had suddenly discovered that they were immoral. So another labor system was needed or expanded. Beginning prominently with Mauritius in 1834, hundreds of thousands of Indians were recruited to work to the empire. They signed contracts, so technically this was not slavery. But many workers faced deceptive recruitment, restricted movement, harsh working conditions, penal sanctions, and enormous power imbalances. Hence, the description often used by critics, a new system of slavery. Not identical to chattel slavery, as my learned colleague said before me, but certainly not the wonderfully voluntary overseas employment program that imperial paperwork sometimes made it sound like. So now look at the scale. Approximately 453,000 went to Mauritius, about 240,000 to British Guyana, about 150,000 to Natal, where I am, and about 144,000 to Trinidad and the Caribbean, about 61,000 to Fiji, and many thousands more went elsewhere. Like I said, there was about 19 different colonies. The total UNESCO's figure is about 1.2 million Indians relocated. Now think about what that means. This was not a marginal historical event. Britain and the wider colonial system effectively engineered a vast movement of human beings across the planet. And those migrations created communities that still exist today. And I'm speaking to you from Durban. The Indian community of Natal did not simply appear beside the Indian Ocean one morning. Our presence here is intimately connected to that history. And then there is the wider economic context of British rule in India. Economist, I think it was Utsa Patnaik, famously estimated that Britain extracted wealth equivalent to approximately $45 trillion from India during those 200 odd years. Now, I want to be intellectually fair. That calculation is contested. Economists, which is one of the hats I wear, can argue about methodology, inflation, exchange rates, opportunity costs, and how historical values should be converted to modern money. But the truth be told, you put 5 economists in a room, and eventually you'll have 6 opinions. We do not need to accept every dollar of the $45 trillion estimate to accept the larger historical point. India was systematically incorporated into an imperial economic structure designed overwhelmingly for Britain's benefit. Raw materials moved, taxes moved, profits moved, people moved, even treasures moved. Think of the Kohinoor. And I have included the Taj Mahal here because remain unconvinced, or I remain convinced rather, that had Britain been able to pack the Taj Mahal into a crate and send it to Birmingham or London, they would have done so. Thankfully, not everything fits into a crate. So why not simply pay everyone? Let's do the arithmetic. For the purposes of our model, suppose there are approximately 5.4 million living descendants of British Indian indenture. Give everyone £10,000 and the bill is already £54 billion. At £50,000 each, it becomes approximately £270 billion. At £100,000 each, we reach approximately £540 billion. And then the arguments begin. Who qualifies? One indentured ancestor? Two? What if only one great grandparent was indentured? What about mixed ancestry? What about descendants living in Britain? What about people whose ancestors returned to India? We would require an entire new government department simply to argue about everybody's grandmother and grandfather. That is why I believe the universal cash compensation is conceptually attractive but practically weak. So that brings me to the most important qualification in this presentation. Nobody knows exactly how many living descendants of indentured Indians there are. There is no global consensus. So we should not manufacture precision where none exists. Instead, I have constructed a transparent demographic model. So we begin with the UNESCO's historical base of 1.195 million relocations. We then allow for return migration and mortality to estimate a long-term settler population of approximately 750 to 900,000. We then apply a conservative multi-generational expansion factor across approximately 5 generations, and that gives us an estimated contemporary range of roughly 4.6 to 6.4 million Indians. So for the remainder of the calculations, I'll use the in-between, which is about 5.4 as a working midpoint. Is that number perfect? No, but it is transparent. And transparent uncertainty is considerably more credible than false certainty. Now, the descendants that are now spread across the world, they're in Mauritius, South Africa, Guyana, Trinidad and Tobago, Fiji, and increasingly in the United Kingdom, Canada, the United States, Australia, and elsewhere through secondary immigration. This creates an interesting irony. Empire moved their ancestors around the world. Their descendants subsequently became global diaspora. And then the British Empire may have disappeared from the map, but in many respects, its demographic fingerprints remains everywhere. That also tells us something important about any reparations program. Eligibility cannot simply depend upon nationality. It must depend upon documented descent. So why education? because education may be the most powerful form of reparative investment available. A university degree is portable. A technical qualification is portable, meaning we can go anywhere in the world with it. Skills survive governments. Knowledge survives currency fluctuations. And education produces benefits that extend far beyond the individual student. A graduate may support his parents or her parents. They educate children, they create business, they employ people, they pay taxes, they transform communities. In other words, education compounds. And unlike cash reparations, an education fund does not attempt to put a price on ancestral suffering. Instead, it says, because your ancestors were denied meaningful freedom and opportunity, the descendants should receive greater opportunity today. That is a morally coherent connection between the past and the present. As they say, teach a man to fish and then he'll feed himself for life. I'm saying that as a vegetarian. Now we get to the money. Use our midpoint of 5.4 million descendants, assume approximately 9% fall within the 18 to 24 age group, assume around 35% pursue tertiary education, vocational education, or formal training. Then apply a 50% financial need threshold. That gives us approximately 85,000 eligible students per year globally who are the descendants of indentured laborers. If the average support package is around £15,000 per student per year, the cost is approximately £1.28 billion annually. So for policy purposes, I round that to about £1.25 billion per year, but that is real money. It is not an economically absurd number, but unlike writing millions of individual checks, we know exactly what Britain would be purchasing with that money: education, skills, qualifications, human capital, and social mobility. Now, the fund should not be administered as an act of political charity. It should be an independent institution. Britain establishes the funding mechanism, and an independent statutory trust administers it. Applicants establish descent through archival and genealogical evidence and shipping records. Financial need is assessed transparently. Money goes towards accredited universities, colleges, technical institutions, and apprenticeships. And results are published. How many students were funded, where, how many graduated, how many found employment, what happened to the household income. If Britain is going to pay £1.25 billion a year, both taxpayers and descendants are entitled to know whether it works. Reparative justice should be compassionate, but it should also have what I would call an audit trail. So eligibility will obviously be controversial, but that is unavoidable. But controversy is not an excuse for administrative vagueness. There should be a documented dissent. There should be an appeals process. Financial need should be assessed relative to the country in which the applicant lives. Funding should cover legitimate educational costs, and there should be measurable outcomes. I would particularly prioritize students who are the first generation in their families to enter tertiary education, because that is where the transformational effect can be greatest. The objective is not to simply send money around the world. The objective is to change the trajectories of people's lives. Now, there are obvious objections. Right? Why should descendants receive anything for something that happened generations ago, hundreds of 150 years ago? Well, because the consequences of historical systems do not necessarily disappear when the legislation disappears. And communities' wealth patterns, migration patterns, and educational opportunities can persist across generations. Then why indenture? Why not every injustice committed by the British Empire? What about the Dutch East India Company and the rest of Europe? There is a legitimate question. My answer is that addressing one historical injustice does not prevent society from addressing another. Then why Britain alone? If not ultimately be Britain alone? Well, as they said, the sun never set on the British Empire. Other governments, corporations, universities, and institutions that benefited historically could participate. But Britain designed and administered much of the system. Leadership should therefore begin there. And finally, Why education rather than cash? Because education is targeted, measurable, productive, and intergenerational. So here's my proposal. British establishes an indenture descendants education fund. Initial commitment 1.25 billion pounds per year. Initial horizon 25 years. Potential reach approximately 85,000 students per year, depending upon the final eligibility rules and grant values. Over 25 years, Britain would commit approximately 31.25 billion in pounds in nominal funding, obviously discounting inflation, but that is substantial. And compared to the scale of Britain's imperial history, this proposal is not intended to bankrupt Britain for what the empire did. This would achieve very little. It is simply intended to make the descendants of indenture richer in opportunity because an empire happened. That is an important distinction. So, can a country repair history without pretending that it can reverse it? Britain cannot return the lives that were lost. They cannot have the women who were raped, they cannot unrape them. The lives that were taken, they cannot be unalive or brought back to exist in the world. I mean, we're talking about impossible things here. It cannot return the years worked on plantations. It cannot erase coercion. It cannot put families back together. It cannot recreate choices that people never had. And it certainly cannot write a check large enough to settle the entire moral account of the empire, but it can do something extraordinary. It can take a system that once transported labor across the world for economic benefit of the empire and transform that legacy to a system that transports opportunity across the world. Not guilt inherited forever, not punishment without end, not an impossible invoice presented to in modern Britain, but acknowledgement and investment. And if venture helps determine where millions of our ancestors ended up, perhaps it's the final legacy that should help determine how far their descendants can go. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Aman. Another extraordinary presentation. You've reminded everyone with exceptional thought went into this, and I can see from the progress of the presentation that you are really focusing on improving the lives of the descendants. Exceptionally well done. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, we want to open the floor now. If you have a short question or a comment, we invite you to raise your electronic hand, which you will find in the reactions button at the base of your Zoom screen. Please go ahead and we will take your questions as soon as you indicate via hand. Meanwhile, Dr. Mahabir, let me give you the first opportunity to comment.
Well, they were all very brilliant presentations, especially the last two with the data and the figures and the quantification. It's really, as you said, extraordinary. But I would like to suggest something further, that we have outlined the case for reparations. And the onus seems to be on Aman in South Africa, and Mr. Gopi and Satyendra had blackout, so he couldn't be here. I believe both of you combined can make this trust forward to prepare a proposal and to ready lobby. You see, what we have here, discussions, but it doesn't take us anywhere. After this webinar ends, I would hate to think that this discussion ends. It must get somewhere. We must have something, whether tangible or intangible. And Aman Singh, I would like your suggestion is how do we move forward and what you can do, what you can contribute, because I don't believe anybody I've heard so far, and from what I've read on reparations, has given so much thought and done so much work as you, and so to Mr. Gopi. So let's hear from both of you. Where do you think this should go and how you personally can make a contribution towards this initiative?
Chairman,
Okay,
Anian?
can I start?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, I think first and foremost, we need to have a think tank not too much of thinking. We need more doing. We need something more tactile in terms of being an organization. And I think from each indenture country, we should have at least one representative. And doesn't need to be proportionate to the number of Indians that were indentured or whatever it is, because some growth rates in each country were vastly different. But I think we need to set up a committee, but it shouldn't, like I said, just be a think tank. It should be given certain powers. It should be funded by certain business magnates. They have the money. The money is not, you need money to create such a fund, but I'm saying we need to create the institution first. And there are definitely wealthy Indians in every colony that can contribute towards this. And then we approach Britain formally to apply for that.
But you see, that's the problem. I don't think, I mean, look at this program. We do this voluntary, we have expenses, and look at the work that we do. It's a testimony in itself, but funding contribution from business folk is minimal. So I don't think we ought to put too much hope in that.
No, I disagree. I think you need a champion who's got a mouth in each country who can push it.
Okay, okay.
I think
Aman, are you willing to be that person in South Africa?
Very much so. I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to do my seva to the community.
Good.
Excellent.
Great.
So let's hear from Mr.
I
Gopi.
myself, I'm a scholarship student, so I definitely would want to play an active role in something like this.
Very good.
Terrific. Thank you. Let's hear from Mr. Gopi now.
Yeah, same thing. I do not mind. In fact, it has become my passion now to know more and more about history and do something about making things right, what was wrong before. I agree with what Aman is saying, that there should be some sort of financing as well, because that will lead us further ahead in our path, in our adventure. Maybe just before that, a little nuance, just before going to financing, preparing our dossier. Your idea of think tank is, I think, is better, where we can start at least via internet, Zoom, etc. Start building files for each country as evidence. This is what I was insisting in my expose earlier, that in our own case for each country, we should, like for our two countries for a start, South Africa and Mauritius, we can start building our file, our dossier with all possible evidence that we can collect in support of various forms of claims. With that, after having done this sort of homework, then we can meet somehow and try to coordinate and decide on early steps, like agreeing on champion who will be leading what in his respective country, sometimes comparing our notes, both sides. That way we can proceed, I think. It is true that financing, some people won't, when it comes to helping and donating money, some people try to get away with it. But there are also, like Aman said, there must be people who must be willing to help as well. We have to identify them. How to identify them? I suppose, first of all, when we are strong in our dossier, we will get financing easily. If we are fragmented, weak, moral type, not quite substantive in what we are asking, the financing may not come. This is what I suggest. What do you think, Aman?
I think the money is there, and I think there are plenty of wealth. I speak for my own country. There are plenty of wealthy Indians who need to drive the institution, the development of the institution itself. And once we do that, and you're right, we have to do it in unison, so we get the synergy of economies of scale. So maybe we should set up an informal or a formal organization and develop a charter, and let's push ahead. Like it shouldn't just be talks about talks. It should be about doing something.
I agree. We must make steps.
Get a global champion. I don't know who's a descendant of, who's well known enough. I know Michael Caine married a descendant of of indenture with Shakira Kane. Maybe Michael can do it for us. For us.
Michael King is who?
He's a famous actor in Britain. He married, I think, was it someone from Guyana?
Correct.
She was a Miss Guyana.
Okay. Well, if we can identify champions while we are meeting, like a think tank, formal or informal, we can, in parallel, try to identify those champions and sponsoring organizations. We can do that together. And also at the level of ICC, if somehow they can share what they have already as evidence, comparative evidence for other countries, we can as well put all this together. But definitely it looks like there is consensus that we must start somewhere. We must, like they say, the first step starts of a long journey, starts with the first step. So I don't have the email address of Oman. Maybe somebody can share it with me.
Dr. Kumar has it.
Yeah, we can share the email addresses of each other and the other
Sure.
presenters and interact and form sort of a think tank and agree on the way forward.
Good.
We cannot be too ambitious at the early stage. I insist that we should put all pieces together in the way we think they should be together, so that we are ready for moving forward and convincing people that there is, because there is also skepticism in asking the reparation. There's a lot of skepticism, doubts, and so if we have a case, money should follow.
Certainly. Thank you very much for that. I see Mr. Peter Ramrika has also joined in the conversation. Glad to have you, sir. He says it would be good to develop a steering group to draw up a terms of reference within, say, 3 to 6 months. Mr. Ramrika, would you like to be part of that steering group?
Yes, now I have to unmute him. I see. All right, you can call upon somebody. I'll find him and unmute him in a while.
No problem. So Mr. Pravin Kumar has been patiently waiting with his hand up. Go ahead, Mr. Kumar. Can you unmute, please?
Hold on, Pravin. Yeah.
Yes, I'm unmuting.
Yeah, go ahead.
It has been excellent presentations this morning regarding reparations. And like, I think I was on the program about 2 or 3 weeks ago with Subhash Aparna. And there has been some progress. And for the first time, the British High Commissioner has invited few people for a meeting regarding the land lease issues in Fiji regarding the Indo-Fijians. So it has taken a while. The idea was mooted, or the communication was mooted about 4 months ago, but this is the first step. And when Aman Singh mentioned about education, and the British did not build any schools for the Indo-Fijians. They built schools for the Europeans, the part Europeans. And when you look at how we have progressed through the efforts of the Girmitias, the Fiji Indians have gone a long way. And, there are arguments about reparations, but for us, in case of Fiji, the Sikiwa of land lease and land tenure are probably the two key issues for us. And our population has decreased in the last, say, 40 years, and it is going to continue to decrease. But for us, we need the British government to assist us in terms of long-term secure leases. Otherwise, for us, we are a landless community, and it is a huge challenge. So I'll leave it there. But for those two speakers, yes, we probably should form a committee and then work towards some sort of reparations. I don't know the answer, whether it is monetary or non-monetary, but I think things have progressed, especially in the case of Fiji in the last probably 5 months. It is good to see that the British High Commissioner has actually invited some of the politicians and academics at the office for a meeting of about 4 or 5 hours. So I leave it there.
Thank you very much, Pravind. I want to throw out to everyone, Dr. Mahabir has put a message on the chat, and he's asking if you are interested in, I'm going to change his words a little bit, if you are interested in being part of a steering committee, please contact him at 1-868-756-4961. So if you're interested in being part of a steering committee for reparations for persons in the Indian diaspora, please contact Dr. Kumar Mahabir on 1-868-756-4961. And you're contacting him to indicate that you wish to be included in the steering committee. Thank you. Chand, go ahead, please.
I endorse what Aman Singh has said and what Praveen has mentioned regarding the land ownership in Fiji. My take on reparation is that we need recognition and dignity in the land that we were born. Financial reparation is good, but we need the dignity. We need to be recognized that yes, we are citizens of those countries. Because each time elections come around, and it is coming around this towards the end of the year or early next year in Fiji, the Indo-Fijians are called Bulangi, which means foreigners or visitors. And when I first moved to US, the number which they gave us, they call it the Social Security number now, but the actual card was called, or it is still called Alien Registration Card. So in Fiji, I'm a Bulangi, and in the US, I'm an alien. Where do I go?
And this comes right back to Dr. Chapavan's presentation last week, where he talked about one of the problems being statelessness. We have to continue the conversation, Chan.
Yes.
I understand your challenge.
Oh, de host wil dat hij spreekt. Hoe moet ik dat nou weer doen?
Okay, Rihanna.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we
Hello,
are hearing
everyone.
you.
Hi,
Go ahead,
Salima.
please.
Yeah, nice to be at the program. And yeah, you said it well. The presentations are very, very good, and I think we're moving forward. It's a step we can make, and I'm here from Holland, and Holland has apologized after my children's book. So I would like to help because now I have another edition of it, and thanks to you, I called with the ex-Minister of Culture and I asked him what sentences he wanted in my new book. And it was all about Mauritius. And after all the countries were colonized and slavery all over ended, Europe needed money because Europe was in a bad condition. And that's when Europe organized the indentured laborship. And the VOC and the WIC, they have their roots here. So, yes, I think together now we can do something if we start. We have to start. So congratulations to you and Dr. Kumar also, because I think this is something big. It's new. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you very
Rihanna.
much for your help. Yes,
You're
thank you.
welcome. Anytime, anytime.
Yeah.
We're happy to help. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you.
Let me welcome Mr. Ken Saline. Go ahead, please. Ken?
Yes, very good presentation. I just wanted to point out that in March of this year, a resolution spearheaded by Ghana to recognized slavery as a crime against humanity was put to the United Nations as a resolution, and that's a non-binding resolution. So it's just recognizing. And 52 countries just abstained altogether from even voting, and that included all of the colonial countries. And the United States, Israel, and Argentina actually voted against it. So my thought process is that if globally, slavery would not even be recognized as a crime against humanity, indentureship is going to have a really tough time on an international basis. That, again, the perpetrators who benefited from indentureship won't even recognize it as a resolution, which is non-binding. There's no ramifications of a non-binding resolution. It's just to physically say, we recognize this. And I would comment that I agree that education really is a key, because if we think about it, within a few generations, this issue might fall off the table altogether. That, you know, if you talk to my kids and their kids, they may not even recognize indentureship at all. So it is very important that education be a key in recognizing this. But I wonder if the speakers have thought about the precedent that has been set on the United Nations in all of these countries abstaining from even voting on it. That's in terms of slavery.
Thank you, Ken. Good observation, good question. So I'll ask each of the speakers to kindly respond. Archana, would you like to begin? Dr. Tiwari?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have a response for Mr. Kansurin? How do we proceed in light of the fact that 52 countries did not even agree that slavery is a crime against humanity? So what options are there for us in the indentured Indian diaspora?
What I feel that we can have our own organization. We can have our, I mean, the countries which received indentured labor, and Indians are in good position there. So we can have our own circle. And first and foremost, I think maybe it is stemming from the fact that I belong to history. I'm a student of history. We have to start with the reinterpretation of history. There are so many things. How we were, how imperial powers, they had a hold not only on our resources, they had a hold on our minds as well. That until and unless you instill in a person that we are lesser human beings, that we are subject of a colonial power, only then you can use people in this manner. So first and foremost, there has to be a reinterpretation of history. And the archives, especially the London archives, they have to be explored. I'm very sure we'll come across documents that would expose the views of the politicians, the views of the administrators, the policymakers of the contemporary Britain, who were making such policies and what they were thinking about us. Because when we come across so many incidents in history, we feel as if the countries of Africa and Asia were being treated just as a property of the imperialist powers. For example, when I'm teaching my students the 1904 British-French Entente Cordiale, France says that Britain can have free hand in Egypt, and Britain reciprocates, that France can have a free hand in Morocco. So, I mean, they were treating us as their property. So, first and foremost, history has to be reinterpreted, and only then we can proceed forward. I mean, as we had war guilt clause in Versailles, because the term reparations, it gained, it became popular from that point. So a guilt has to be fixed. Only then we can proceed forward, and they have to own it up. And this is going to be a long process. I don't think so that we will achieve it in a certain frame of time. No, that is not possible. And if we can get only some historians, say in England or in France, or for that matter, Spain, Portugal, US, they were all colonial powers. First and foremost, if we can get some kind of validation from the historians in these countries, we will have a path forward. That is what I feel.
May I intervene?
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Tiwari. Go ahead, please, Mr. Gopi.
Yeah, I think suggestions there are many, but we must not waste our energy into many directions. I think for a start, what we can do, I must interact with Mr. Aman and try to, his project is laudable. I think it's a point where we can do a start. Because education is one of the various ways to that represents reparation. So maybe, and it's a big project in reparation itself, but it will be very costly. I would say I don't know how much work ICC has done before on this project of claiming reparation. Has there been any work before? If not ICC, somebody else in another country for indenture?
No, not to our knowledge. There has been discussion so far,
Okay,
and
okay,
and we have written some papers, academic
okay.
papers, but no. And we have approached the CARICOM, the Caribbean community. They
Yeah.
have a section, a division on reparations, but Indians are excluded. Nowhere
Not there.
at any level are Indians included in whatever committee stage.
So you're saying
Because they
indenture
don't
is
think that we deserve reparation.
CARICOM group?
Yes.
Yeah. What is it? Is it a group of countries or an international body,
Yes.
UN body?
Yeah, representatives from each of these countries in the Caribbean.
And what is their reporting line? Where do they report?
They're reporting to CARICOM, and they are lobbying various governments for apology to begin with.
And for them, indenture is not part of their project.
No, they may say otherwise, but that may just be lip service to say indentureship should be included. But the reality is that none of us has been asked to sit on any committee at whatever level, not even the lowest level.
Okay, so let's ignore them for now. I think the first thing is that we must accept the fact that there has been injustice to indentured people. If we do not accept this fact, then there is no case for reparation. And how do we demonstrate that there has been injustice? Somebody earlier has mentioned about reinterpretation of history. The idea is correct, but maybe that also becomes part of the package of reparation, because building of records, digitalizing and keeping proper records, and rewriting, correcting history wherever needed. I would suggest that we start with the education project and see where we go without yet at this stage preparing a proper terms of reference for a committee or a steering committee or something. Let's start informally, build something, and convince ourselves that if we can move steps ahead from the materials that do share the information that we have. I think this could be a starting point. If we waste energy on too many directions, too many issues, dimensions, we won't.
Let's chart out a framework, general framework, and let's not get into details of whether it's monetary compensation or education or health. Let's
those things can come, but later.
Yes, later.
Yeah, later. Okay, I want to leave now because it's quite late here.
Thank you.
I don't. There's a question for me. I'm ready.
Mr. Gopi, we'll be wrapping up in just about 7 minutes. So if you could just hold on,
okay.
Let's just take a response from Aman. And then we have 3 hands up again. We'll just take their comments very, very quickly or their questions. So Dr. Shardanand, Dr. Lanroy Thomas, Kumu Gupta, please just bring questions very quickly after Mr. Aman Singh Maharaj has made his point. Aman, go ahead, please.
Thanks for that. So, Shalima, I believe nothing ventured, nothing gained. I am cognizant of what happened in Ghana, and maybe we might just end up with egg on our face. But at the same time, the history of our people says we cannot just accept it for what it is. We have to try and then fail or fail to try. And I prefer to do the former. So whatever comes out of it, I know I can clear my conscience.
Excellent. I don't think ignoring the CARICOM reparations movement is the best way to go. I think what we can do is accept the fact that they've already started the ball rolling. Any efforts that we make will simply add to their efforts and perhaps augment what we are trying to do. Let's take Dr. Shardanand, please.
Please, thank you very much. Can someone mute me?
Yes, you are unmuted.
My
and
video
you can turn on your video if you wish. We have unmuted you.
You have muted me.
We can hear you. Go ahead, please.
Yes, can you hear me? But I cannot. Yes, thank you very much. And Dr. Archana ji, namaste. Everyone, bye-bye. I have listened and framing all the presentations. I came to the conclusion that a claim for reparation requires a legal base. Do we have this? Who are the claimants? Against whom is the claim made? And what exactly is being claimed? Who is considered the victim? Which international conventions and legal instruments can support the claim? Recognizing by UNESCO is nothing. No country will accept that, as you seen last for the slaveries. This is a real question. Otherwise, you can create a lot of a bank of information, historical and sociological. No country will listen to you, because if they are going to give speeches, they have to pay. What is the legal base? What is our legal base? That is my real question. Thank you very much.
Right. Okay, and it's quite a valid question, one that we will indeed consider. Thank you very much, Dr. Shardanand. Lenroy, go ahead, please.
May I react to that?
Yes.
I heard me?
Go ahead, Lenroy.
Yes, I heard me?
Yes.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Well, Dr. Shadna knows that I'll be presenting a paper on this reparation idea on the 10th, and Shamila, you know about it also. And I'm glad to see that Dr. Gopi, Mr. Gopi here, and Aman, both of you have raised some issues, some points that I'm so happy about, that We are on the same wavelength, basically. One of the other points in regards to reparation that I think that we can go forward with, other than education, is also what I would call archival justice and genealogical justice. All right. So I'm happy that we can do something, because I think I'm recommending also that we form a committee, a steering committee or something like that, to move forward. The details and the evidence and all that, there's some evidence that we can use. For example, we have trauma now that I and any indenture descendants is suffering from this trauma, from identity. I want to know my family in India. Who are my family? Who caused that to be broken? The linkage up to my family. The British, they were responsible for the system, for the records that were kept. And so they have to be held accountable for that. So that's one example of where we can go forward in regards to claiming. And then, as Mr. Gopi said, we have to look at the other evidence and build them over a period of time. But we need to start somewhere. And as Dr. Mahabas said, I don't think we can learn from the CARICOM committee, the reparatory committee for the Africans, but they got, Guyana, for example, got 100,000 from the Gladstone family descendants, and not one penny went to the Indians. All right. So we have to take note of that. We can learn from what they're doing. We can cooperate with them, but I think we need to form our own organization. And this is a good step forward. I'm fully in support of that. I can represent St. Vincent on this committee, and let's go forward with it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Very good, thank you. I'm glad you raised the Gladstone heirs. Please note that ICC had sent a letter to the Gladstone heirs organization. It was acknowledged, but nothing happened after that. So, Mr. Gopi, I know you want to respond, but let's just take Kumu Gupta's question very quickly, and then I'll ask you to respond to all. Thank you. Kumu, go ahead, please.
Kumu.
Yeah, 1 second. I'm having trouble unmuting. Hold on. Yeah, hi. Yeah, sorry, I just joined. I just want to very quickly say that I read somewhere that Queen Elizabeth, when she was in India, she said, it's bad what happened, but best is to leave it behind and move forward. And so she refused to apologize for what happened. And the current generation has no opinion. So that's their official standard. They have no opinion, and that they don't get involved in these things. Just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Noted with thanks. Mr. Gopi, go ahead, please, with your response.
Yeah, I just want to react to the reservation made about legal. We should prepare a legal case. I tend to disagree partly with that. I will tell an anecdote. About 2 years ago, when I launched my 4th book, somebody was present, a big lawyer, famous lawyer, and I mentioned to him en passant during a conversation that the indentured people must obtain reparation, compensation, or whatever. He said, this is impossible. It cannot happen. I did not tell him anything as response, because I know it is my conviction that there is a case for reparation for indentured people. And that's why even if it was aside because my profession is corporate governance specialist, but I was using this project as hobby, maybe full-time hobby, we can say now, because I'm a retired person, spending most of my time on this. If we limit this project as purely legal, if we follow legal procedures, we will not reach anywhere. I don't think we'll reach anywhere, because this is a multifaceted project, not just legal. It has financial implications. There are moral issues. There are other issues. So purely legalistic procedure, it won't work. I would rather, for people who are really passionate about asking reparation for indenture, I would rather ignore, put legal guidance not away but aside for the moment, build our case that we have adequate evidence that there should be reparation, even if it's not 100%, if we are sort of convinced that we have enough evidence to say that there has to be reparation, and we can start, for instance, with the education project that Mr. Harman proposed earlier, then we proceed like that. Even if lawyers later, if we need legal guidance later, for instance, for the education project, because if we just ask so much money for an education project for descendants of indentured laborers, they will tell us, what makes you ask us this money for education? You do your own thing. You have your country, your budget, your government. But we have to say that you have been doing harm to us, colonizers or whatever empires. You have been doing harm to our people. So you need to accept that you have been doing harm. And we have evidence that you have been doing harm. Once you agree that you have been harming us, we are asking you to support us with an education project. And this is our proposal, our file. And there, if there are legal issues, we can try legal issues then and at that point in time. There are a lot of things I'm considering on a proper strategy to how to move about. I haven't completed this exercise yet because this forum came at this point in time. I have started the work already on the different strategic options of moving forward for reparation. I want to finish that exercise, and once I'm ready, I can interact with other participants in other countries and work together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gopi. Aman, can we have your response and closing comments?
My small comment, please. I think
No, Dr. Sharanan, I'm sorry, we are already past 5. So at this point, we just want to take the closing comments of the speakers. Thank you. Aman, go ahead, please.
Sure. Not a response, just a closing statement. In some countries, a Holocaust denial of what happened to the Jews is a criminal offense. You can get jailed for it. And I'm not equating indenture to the Holocaust, but I'm saying we need to give it enough attention so that it gets the kind of recognition it deserves globally, because it was a criminal act, no matter from a moral point of view. Maybe at the time, in terms of the legislation, it was acceptable, but morally it wasn't. Secondly, yes, I'm well aware of what Queen Elizabeth said when she went to India. She even went to Amritsar and Jallianwala Bagh, and she said, yes, Britain didn't do some very nice things in the past. I mean, how do you gloss over it? So at the end of the day, my belief is people of her ilk, they rotting in the grave somewhere, and we don't need to take what they say as a gospel. And I know it's not easily accepted, what I'm saying, but I think we need to go beyond just accepting the past for what it is and moving on. And no one's going to attack Britain. I'm saying let's approach them from a moral point of view, as the good Dr. Gopi said before me. Let's read from a moral point of view, not to implicate or to attack. Because, I mean, these are people who are 3 or 4 generations down. How can you attack them? They didn't do it. But they certainly benefited from it because the money trickled down. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you. Mr. Peter Ramota has sort of agreed with you in the chat. He says, our approach is not to criticize what has happened, but more positive in promoting positive outcomes. That is education as an example. So thank you for that. And lastly, I'd like Dr. Archana Tiwari to please make her closing comments. And Dr. Tiwari, could you please also mention what, if any, would India, via, for example, the authorities in UP, Bihar, Tamil Nadu, those areas where, for example, the majority of those indentures came from, what role do you think they might have in this call for reparations?
I mean, you have given me a great responsibility, but I'll begin from the last remark that you made, the role of the people, because this was the area UP, Bihar, Tamil Nadu. Actually, if we look at the indentured labor, they were people who were sent as indentured labor, they were migrating. They were looking for jobs. So it is not that UP, Bihar and Tamil Nadu and parts of Maharashtra, they sent the majority, but people from other parts of India, they were also sent as, they were also indentured. And I'm sorry to say that presently the realization that this was the part of India from where people were sent as indentured labor, uh, this realization is coming about very slowly. We have not even included in our basic history books. I mean, you will be surprised to hear that when I joined research in 1995, and when this indentured labor uh, to Trinidad and Tobago was suggested by my supervisor, late Professor R.N. Mehra, I mean, I had heard the term indentured for the first time. So, first and foremost, this knowledge is lacking, this realization is lacking. People are not aware about it. But still, the intellectuals, the teachers, the researchers, many like me, many more who are very young to me and full of enthusiasm, they will definitely take it forward. And I think no, first and foremost, we have to begin with how to put it, that we have to approach the colonial power. For India, the colonial power is Britain, and we have to approach them that they should open their archives, and we have to begin at that point. And we have to take into confidence some of their historians, and I think there would be many who would agree that they don't have to interpret, they don't have to show that colonialism was for the benefit of India, and especially the migration of people, because most of that is forced. The person is not knowing where he is going to Fiji, where Fiji is, where British Guiana is, where Trinidad is. They are not aware about the geographical location, the kind of work, and that they are going to be a substitute for a slave. That would be their basic work. So we have to take this thing forward, and we have to find like-minded historians in Britain also. And this is again, this is going to be a long journey, but somewhere down the line a beginning has to be made. So we have to make a beginning, and I think ICC has done a great job, and that this topic has come up. And I think the other topics which have been discussed on this forum, even they are also very informative and very relevant. But I think that the relevance of this topic is going to have a long journey, and it will add greatly to the knowledge of history. It will be path breaking.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Dr. Tiwari. And it was
Thank
wonderful having you here. I know it's very late in India right now, so we cannot thank you enough for your sacrifice in being here at this time. I want to thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, there we have it. I just want to remind everyone about a symposium which has been organized by the Center of Indian Languages of the Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi in cooperation with the Foundation Global Grammatology Bharat, which based in Rotterdam, which is led by Dr. Sharanand. That symposium is going to be taking place on September 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th, and it will be online. All the speakers have already been arranged, and the reparations conversation will be taking place there as well. So we will send further information on that to remind everyone, and your participation as a speaker, as well as simply being a member of the audience, would be greatly appreciated. So I want to thank everyone for your participation today, and we anticipate your participation in the future, not just in the steering committee, but in also dissemination of information about this very, very important cause. Thank you all so much. I now turn you over to Ashley.
Thank you.
Where am I? Very informative presentations today. I would like to thank everyone for taking the time to attend and participate. Thank you very much to Shalima for being a great moderator, as always. As was said earlier, this public meeting is being hosted by the Indo-Caribbean Cultural Center and the Amina Ghafoor Institute for the Study of Indentureship and its Legacies, led by Professor David Aberdeen. Feel free to contact the ICC to publish your books. Remember that we are asking you to kindly give us your suggestions. If you give a donation, your name will be placed on our poster and all promotional materials. Please contact Dr. Mahabir for details. Our topic next Sunday will be race and inter-ethnic relations in the Indian diaspora. Thanks to our planning team led by Dr. Kumar Mahabir and Shalima Mohammed. Thanks to our IT consultants Navin Mangal and Daryl Grantham, and thanks to Daryl again for designing the poster. Please visit, like, and subscribe to our YouTube channel to see all our past recordings. Thank you, and from Trinidad and Tobago, signing off, Dhanyavad.
Navin, the volume, the audio not loud. Thank you all for joining, and thank you all for staying this long. Very interesting conversations, and we hope